Hi, everyone. We'll get started in a few minutes. While we wait, we would encourage you to write in the chat where you're coming from today. All right, so we got a couple people from the Philippines, one from Malaysia, Puerto Rico, Kenya, Nepal. Wow, they're coming in fast. Malaysia, California, Myanmar, Cambodia, Philippines, Sri Lanka, wow, El Salvador, Philippines again, a lot of Philippines, Massachusetts, Brazil, Cambodia, Colombia, Nepal, Netherlands. All right, well, we might as well get started. So thank you, everyone. It's great to see such a good turnout. Welcome. My name is David Neidel, and I work for the World Agroforestry Centre, through which I serve as the Asia Program Advisor for the Environmental Leadership and Training Initiative at Yale University, or ELTI. I'm joined by my colleague, Saskia Santamaria, wave Saskia, who's the ELTI Neotropics Program Associate based in Panama, and Jillian Bloomfield, who's the ELTI Online Training Program Coordinator based in the US. We're pleased to welcome you today to the third webinar in this 8-part webinar series, Forest and Landscape Restoration in Practice. Through the series, we're celebrating the experiences and perspectives of alumni of ELTI's 15 years of capacity development and training. For those of you who aren't very familiar with ELTI, ELTI is an initiative of Yale University School of the Environment, which received generous support from ARCADIA, a charitable fund of Lisbet Rausing and Peter Baldwin. We're a global team of individuals and partner institutions who work to train and support people from all sectors and backgrounds to restore and conserve tropical forest landscapes using strategies that support biodiversity and livelihoods. Today's webinar looks at agroforestry and on-farm restoration practices. We're pleased to be joined by ELTI alumna Joy Compendio, who participated in a field-based training in the Philippines on rainforestation in 2015 and now facilitates similar types of training events. We were also supposed to be joined by Irene Montes Londoño, but she unfortunately had to drop out at the last minute due to an urgent personal matter. We hope that she can join us at some later date. So some logistics first. To avoid issues with connectivity and to provide access to subtitles, Joy has kindly pre-recorded her short presentation. We'll hear Joy's presentation and then have a chance for a short discussion altogether. This session is being recorded and will be sent out by email in the next few days, as well as posted to ELTI's YouTube channel. So if you have questions, please write them using the question and answer feature, and we will get to some of those at the end of the session. Also, feel free to take a look at the chat where Saskia and I will be posting relevant links and resources. Okay, so with no further ado, we'll start with Joy. Joy Compendio, please wave. So Joy is a plant taxonomist by training with a bachelor's degree in environmental management from Visayas State University, or VSU, and a master's degree in forestry from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Joy is an ELTI alumna, as already mentioned, but then went on to join ELTI as the ELTI Philippines country coordinator based at Visayas State University on the island of Leyte. Joy today will share with us her presentation about promoting rainforestation. So thank you, Joy, for preparing the presentation, and let's turn to the video.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joy Compendio. I am currently working as the Philippine Program Assistant of ELTI Philippines. So today I will be presenting about rainforestation farming as an alternative approach to agroforestry in the Philippines. So as a short background, the Philippines has experienced a dramatic change in its landscape from about 70% forest cover in the 90s to less than 10% remaining today due to shifting cultivation in the uplands and intensive logging, especially in the old growth dipterocarp forests, which is highly valuable for timber production. To restore the forests, the use of exotics became conventional concept with the misguided notion that a simple greening of the area is as good as ecosystem restoration. So since exotic was highlighted, understanding and appreciation of the native species were underestimated. So in 1992, the Visayas State University in the Philippines, in partnership with German Agency for Technical Cooperation, or we know today as GIZ, started to develop the rainforestation farming with a hypothesis that farming will be more sustainable the closer its species composition to the original local forests. Basically, it's like mimicking the original forest cover by choosing the species that thrives best in the area. So, since the Philippines is an archipelago, we have some rainforestation principles that we developed through time. So, with a complex geologic history in the Philippines, mountainous topography in the tropical region, this created distinct biogeographic regions. In each regions, different species thrives very well. So we have to use species that are indigenous, and therefore we have to know our area, know the type of forests you are working with. In the Philippines, we have 12 forest formations, of Fernando et al. In 2008. Thus, we also have to know the species composition in each forest types, which are the pioneer species in this area, which are the late successional species, and what is the quality of the soil, that are basically the things that we need to know. So most of the time, we are working with highly degraded areas, so we can make it productive later on. And so you might need to search for historical literature of the area or conduct interviews with native residents or IPs, the indigenous people. And lastly, design the plan, identify previous land use and existing land use, and proposed land use and management objectives for the area. Will you build communities within a CBFM, the neural instrument, or the community-based forest management, or with a local government for watershed rehabilitation, or even for some agroforestry sectors? Okay, so I have here a picture of rainforestation farming. So this is what we are basically looking at later on, agriculture with native trees. So to maximize the forest restoration in production areas or for the purpose of agroforestry, we can optimize the above ground resources by having multi-level canopies and hedgerow systems. So through the years, rainforestation has evolved to cater to different land management objectives in the canopy of agroforest. In the concept of agroforestry, various studies proves that trees that we have in the Philippines can be partnered best with our native tree species. So as you can see, they've been successfully growing because the species composition matching from the original forest cover was considered. Okay, so I have here some cases of our rainforestation farms in Leyte province. So the Visayas State University, which is the pioneer rainforestation farm, the first trial plot in VSU was previously a degraded landscape. So this became a site where crop species around Leyte and its neighboring islands were being conserved, while matching the different perennial and annual crops like cacao and abaca, or known as Manila hemp. So a few years later, the remaining trees in the edges, as you can see, can also act as windbreaks. So Philippines has been known to experience more than 20 typhoons a year. So it's really very well to consider the dishes that can thrive for those areas which can experience this number of typhoon. Okay, so next is from Shenda San Vicente Farmers Association. It's a community-based farm, rainforestation farm. So in their case, the community was very eager to protect their forest resources. They have been bombarded with series of trainings and educational campaigns about the importance of forests from the Department of Natural Resources and VSU. Also, however, their main concern is how to feed their family. So they're not they are not really prioritizing the protection. They have to prioritize how to feed their family. So they started rainforestation farming in 1995 under a community-based forest management agreement with DNR, and they are responsible to protect the whole 2,236 hectares, as you can see in the photo. They've divided the whole area to 3 zones. The largest is the protected zone, variety protection from illegal loggers and poaching. So, first photo, as you can see, is for river stabilization, mostly from the buffer zone area. So these are identified areas outside the boundaries of immediate adjacent to designated protected areas. So that needs special development control in order to avoid or minimize harm to the protected area or the protected zone. And then the least part, the next 2 photos here is a photo of abaca production and seedling production, where they are collecting seeds from known sources of mother trees in the area in multiple use zone. So they are utilizing everything for production. So in this case, they are also planting native species of trees and integrate it with fruit trees and cash crops. So as you can see, while they are protecting and restoring the remaining forest cover, and they are also complying the need of their farmer for relating activities such as the production of seedlings and even the utilizing abaca production. And then the next slide is also about privately owned by Professor Manuel Posas in Leyte. So he's a professor in agronomy at Visayas State University. His farm is about a 20-year-old farm already with about less than a hectare. One of their vision in this farm is for his rice field, for the distribution of water in this small rice field production. And now he's already serving good quality drinking water for his neighbors too. So that's one of his income generating activity in his site. So I have a few points here, but there are already numerous publications which could give you much impacts on rainforestation farming as an effective approach to agroforestry. So here the increased livelihood opportunities for farmers and sustainable agroforestry for the locals and future generation. So we can see the sustainability of the production. And also, while sustaining agroforestry, we have conservation of native species because we are utilizing the seeds that coming from the different mother tree sources, and then protection for wildlife by restoration. So we're really not just generating the economic side, also doing this ecologically. And the rainforestation farming impacted not just agroforestry, but more so preserved our forests in the Philippines. So to further support rainforestation, the Rainforest Restoration Initiative was established. So we have here RFRI. This is a network organization composed of individuals from the academe, non-government organizations, and private sectors engaged in environmental advocacy. Training and capacity building and project implementation are their main roles for this, and research and development. So you can check our website to see further cases for rainforestation, the challenges, and the success stories of our different partners in this advocacy. So I think that's my last slide. Thank you for listening.
All right, Joy. Well, thank you very much for your very interesting introductory presentation on rainforestation farming. I'm sure it stimulated a lot of questions about rainforestation, as well as your work in promoting it through ELTI's capacity building efforts. So Joy, okay, so it's great that you've turned on your camera and microphone. As a reminder to everyone, you can type questions in the question and answer section of your screen, and we'll get to as many as we can over the next, say, 15 or 20 minutes, or as long as needed. This presentation and question and answer session, once again, is being recorded and will be posted to your YouTube channel in the next few days. So maybe, Joy, I'll start off with a question, which is, what do you think are the biggest obstacles to people adopting rainforestation farming?
Based on our experiences for the last few years of my research also for rainforestation, one of the obstacles is the political issues. Experience in the Philippines has shown how national priorities change with frequent changes in political leadership. So it's up to them what are their priorities. So if they prioritize helping our environment or advocating for the environment, it will the leadership will help the community or the people promoting rainforestation. But in some cases, there are some politicians or leaders who are not advocating or who are not prioritizing environmental concerns. So that's why there's changes for that. And then also, one of the difficult thing also in adopting rainforestation is the change of mindset, of the people. As what I've said in the presentation earlier, the people were really exposed in using exotic species like Swietenia macrophylla, especially in our province. And then they have this mindset that the native species are slow growing species, and that's why they wanted to have a timber production which could have easier economic income for them. So the mindset is also difficult for that. But as we go along with the education trainings with the people, we are really exposing them not just the economic side, but also the ecological benefit of adopting rainforestation farming.
Okay, great, thank you. We have another question, which is, what agricultural products are being used besides cacao? And are there any studies that show yield improvements in those farms?
Yeah, one of the major agricultural crops that I've seen which grows well with rainforestation is the abaca production. There are a lot of publications with that, especially in the yield of the production of abaca with combination of native trees in the area, and also some fruit trees depending on the area. So there are some areas that some agricultural crops or some fruit trees doesn't want shaded, whole time of sunny, they love sunlight, or some loves shaded area. So it depends on the site. So during our rainforestation trainings, we are exposing the trainers to different sites, and we wanted them to observe the different trees that is growing in the area where they wanted to do the farming. So that's why we also wanted to visit their areas for us to study what are the native trees or native crops that suits best in their area.
Joy, so we have another question that says, and you already talked a little bit about this, but how do you resolve the conflict of interest among different stakeholders? How do you handle that?
Okay, so yeah, there's this importance of transparency. So every time there is activities to be done, or especially in the planning, monitoring, evaluation. So we always encourage every stakeholders to attend the meetings or the sessions before each activities for them to know first. And then I have this experience also that during my BS thesis in Shenda San Vicente Farmers Association, we are looking at the different stakeholders who help in promoting rainforestation in their sites. So we have commonly in the Philippines, we have the local government units, the Visayas State University, which is a university which is a nearby university within the site. And then we also have some non-government organizations in the Philippines who are helping. And ELTI was also one of the major organizations who also was the one who's also helping in some of the activities of Shenda San Vicente Farmers Association. So that's why we really want them to be included in each of the planning sessions. So you have this transparency.
Great, thanks, Joy. There's also a question about basically the economic and social benefits of rainforestation kind of over time. Could you explain that a bit?
Explain the effect or impact on that?
Yeah, the kind of the economic benefits and in some cases also social benefits that rainforestation practitioners benefit from. Okay,
so every time we do the monitoring and evaluation in the different rainforestation farms, whether it's still young or it's already 20-year-old rainforestation farm, we do an assessment for that. And the thing that we are usually looking at is the environmental benefit, the economic benefit, and the social benefit. So for the environmental benefit, you can see this also in our website. There are a lot of publications already which supports good or an advantage for the environment while doing this planting of natives. So the condition of the soil, it has a great impact in the condition of the soil. As what I've said earlier also, we are usually dealing with degraded areas, but you can see we have already some publication for that. The ecological side is advantageous for that, because we also notice the return of the native species of wildlife in the area. So we have a major adopter of rainforestation in Negros. He's already famous in the Philippines. His name is Rene Vendiola. There is recently rediscovered species of bird which was found 111 years ago, and now it's already living in his farm due to the planting of natives. So yeah, there are a lot of publications for that. And then for the social side, we are looking at two sides here. There are some farms who adopts rainforestation in a community level, and some who also adopts in his or her own farm. So for people who just wanted to have his own farm, he doesn't have to deal with everyone in the community, unlike for the other who wants to be included in a community level. So there's benefit for that, because if you're just doing rainforestation alone, you can do whatever you want, but you also have to consult also the technical advice of some of the people who are part of the rainforestation advocacy. And also for the community level, the advantage for that also is you can do easier action for that, but you have to deal with the different types of people within the community, something like that. And then for the economic side, it depends on the purpose of rainforestation farm, because some of our adopters, they just wanted to have purely restoration. But for some, they wanted to have timber production and also like agricultural, like agroforestry type. So they are also mixing it with some agroforestry, agricultural crops, something like that. But for more information with the impacts in the ecological, economical, and social side, we have some publications that we can show you in the website that I showed earlier in my slide.
Thank you, Joy. So more or less in the line of the stakeholders and the interactions and all of that, one question is, how does rainforestation farming complement or support the Philippine government forest restoration program on national greening?
Okay, we have the executive order. I forgot the number for that, but we already have the executive order EO 2004-06. I think that's one. We have the national adoption of rainforestation technology in the national level. So all of our advocacies in terms of planting trees, it's not just planting trees, it's planting native trees in the area. So we implemented it in the year 2004 with some of the technical person in the Visayas State University. They already pushed the promotion of rainforestation in the national level through EO 2004-06. So that's the promoting rainforestation as the national strategy for forest restoration, I think. But you can see that in the Philippine government memorandum circular order.
Yeah, so in other words, rainforestation has been accepted as an official reforestation strategy by the DENR and is playing a role in the National Greening Program. Okay, great, thank you. There is a question about the meaning of native or indigenous species. Somebody's wondering kind of what exactly does that mean? How are you defining kind of native or indigenous in this regard?
Okay, so in our terms for indigenous or native trees, I mentioned earlier during my presentation that we are asking the local people, especially the old people in the area, what are the usually the trees or the species that's really growing originally in their forest. So we mean with natives or indigenous is that the original species growing in their area. So sometimes, since we are talking in the Philippine area, there are some islands here, like for example in Leyte, there are some species here in our island which are not found in some islands in Luzon, which is also part of the Philippines. So we can say that the species here in Leyte are the ones that is really native in Leyte or indigenous in Leyte. So we are not really promoting planting of different species. Like we have to really learn the original condition of the area before doing the plantation. So we have to, study first the area.
Great, thank you.
More or less in that line, one of the questions is, how is the community process with the identification of the mother trees as a seed source and the assembly of the nursery?
Pardon, Saskia?
I'll repeat, sorry. So more or less in the line of talking about indigenous species and all of that, one of the question is, how is the community process with the identification of mother trees as a seed source, and how do you assemble the nurseries and the assembly and construction of the nursery?
So mostly for the community level, we as part of the Rainforestation advocacy, we are visiting those communities, and then there are some local villagers who really knows the mother tree in the area. What are the trees that is already flowering and fruiting? So we usually link our knowledge with their knowledge in identification. So there are also some time that they have this indigenous knowledge that we in the academe or in the university cannot really, doesn't even know. So we are also including their indigenous knowledge for that. They have really a lot of indigenous knowledge that we don't have. So for that, they already have the mother tree, and they are actually collecting the fruit, the seeds that will fall on the ground, and then they are planting it. And usually in the community level, the men will do the collection, and then the women will do the planting. So that's the usual thing in the community level. And then after that, since we in the university, we are training them on how to do minimalist type of nursery, because in the community level, they don't have that much money to do expensive nursery. But for us, we are just helping them on how to do ways on how to establish nursery. So part of our rainforestation training also, we have this rainforestation training. They have these 5 days of visiting some sites, and then one of the activities there is to help them know or help them in the technical way on how to establish nursery management and practices.
Nice. You've mentioned two very important things, and it's that like that dialogue of knowledge between, all the scientific stuff, but also how the community knowledge is really important, especially to make it work as a team in the long term. And also I liked also what you mentioned about how the men collect the seeds and then the women do the planting of the seeds. That's also good to know that they are thinking in terms of teamwork.
Yeah. And also an additional thing also for that is that they, especially in I am really exposed in the community based in forest management in CSVFA, or Shenda San Vicente Farmers Association. The membership for that is not individual, but in a family level. So in a family level, the men will do the work, the hard work, and then the women will do the livelihood opportunities, like selling the fruits, selling something that they have in their farm. And then the children will sometimes go with their parents. So that's why whenever we go to the community, we are also exposing the children in some activities about rainforestation to have the sustainability of the knowledge sharing with them.
Super. That's really nice to make it a family affair so that everyone contributes, especially because of the relay, like the generational relay, like, afterwards the kids can take over and keep doing those things in terms of sustainability.
Joy, there's some questions here from, it's wonderful. We have participants from the Philippines as well as many other countries. Could you give some context about the Philippines, and in this case, ownership or land tenure or tree tenure these rainforestation farms? Basically, who is owning these trees or these newly established areas or agroforestry areas, and what kind of like the memorandum of agreement processes or arrangements do they make before or during the rainforestation process?
Okay. Uh, as I mentioned also in one of our conversations, we are looking for some we are looking for a tenured land, which are already titled, because if this is common land, or you know, a lot of people is I don't know the term for that. We have this we call it common because a lot of people are sharing with that. Like for example, if you are a family, you have this family, and then all of the siblings is sharing the same parcel of land. So it's somewhat problematic for us because the siblings, they might have different decisions that they wanted in that parcel of lands. So we wanted that if you have to adopt rainforestation, we wanted them to have this titled land for them to really do their own rainforestation farm. Because if there are a lot of people sharing that one parcel of land, it's very difficult to deal with different people. But there is also this community-based, we have this community-based management agreement. This is an agreement which is given to you by the DNR, virtue of the DNR, or the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. The community has the capacity to, because if they have, you know, if group of people doesn't have their own farm, but they wanted to adopt rainforestation, so they wanted to do rainforestation, but they don't have farm, so we are advising them to register their farm into like a community-based forest management agreement. They have the capacity to manage it within 25 years and then renewable for another 25 years. So that's the case of CSBFA, where they already manage the land within 25 years. It is almost 2,000. Yeah, the total number of land is 2,236 hectares. So the whole community managed that whole area. So during the rainforestation trainings, we have the last part of the program is we are asking the people on what type of land they have. So we don't have problems if they own the land, but if they don't own the land, it became problematic for us. So if they are also planting the trees, we are advising them to register it in the DNR. So they have, so if once they already register it, they already have the capacity to cut it in a certain, if they have this timber production, if their purpose is for timber production. So we are advising them to register it, the trees. We, in the university level, we are also helping them. We encourage them to register it, and we are also helping them to do that processing of the papers for the DNR.
Great, thank you, Joy. We have a question about what kind of commercial timber species have been promoted through rainforestation, and also kind of tied to this is, you know, I know dipterocarps are an important part of the Philippine forest and are an important part of rainforestation. But the conventional wisdom has always been that they're, you know, they grow slowly. It's hard to find the seeds. And in some cases, you can't use them for reforestation at all. So what kind of innovations have been developed which allows you to work with dipterocarps? Thank you.
So yeah, one thing also that they are not easily adopting rainforestation farming is that mindset, which has this capacity to grow. These trees that we are promoting has the capacity to grow very slow, but we found out that there are really some, especially for the dipterocarps, there are some species which are fast growing, even if you put them in a totally open area or even in degraded area. But we also have some experiments that some species of dipterocarps doesn't really thrive well if it's open area. So the thing here is that our rainforestation technologies have been evolving. And then one of the things that we found out is that dipterocarps will grow really well, and most of the time it will also grow faster if usually for the dipterocarps you have to put shaded trees first, or the pioneer species of trees, pioneer native species. So usually the Nara or Pterocarpus indicus for the Philippines, we know it as our national tree. We usually plant it in the first year, and then it will give shade later on to the next year of planting for dipterocarps if we wanted to grow some dipterocarp species. There are really fast-growing species of native native trees in the Philippines: Nara, Molave, Kalumpit. It is a species of Terminalia. So we usually plant first the fast-growing species, and then plant next the dipterocarp species.
Okay, so speaking about dipterocarps, someone has asked, what is the, and if you have this information at hand, what is the suggested ratio of native tree species like dipterocarps, etc., versus agronomical species? Or should that factor be determined by the soil type and terrain? Do you have like a formula?
I think we don't have formula for that, but if we visit the site, we can see the intervention that we will going to make with that. Usually there's no ratio. We just like the original forest. We're just planting, different trees. But usually, for some of the Yolanda affected areas or the Typhoon Haiyan, we encourage them to do. This is the one thing that we observe. We encourage them to plant windbreakers, because the Philippines is experiencing 20 more plus typhoons in the country. So we encourage them to plant windbreakers in the edges of their farm, and then so we have different species that we can recommend for that. And then next, the inside part, there you can grow your native trees. So we are also asking, because the last part of our trainings also for rainforestation, we are asking their plans first. And then if they will going to discuss their plans, we are there after their discussion. We are also giving our technical advices for that. So we wanted to ask them first what they really wanted in their farm, or where do they want to put the agroforestry. And also one of the things that is new is doing some free range chickens. They are including the involvement of animals in their farm. So something like that. So we are asking them what they wanted in the farm, and then next we will be giving them the technical advice.
Good. So it's not like a recipe, a strict plan, but something that you have to adapt to the circumstances, which makes sense in terms of really establishing something that can, live longer.
Joy, there's a question here. I would guess, and I often get these questions from people who live in countries with elephants. And that is there any kind of conflict with wildlife in terms of trying to establish a rainforestation site? Are there any particular steps you have to take to try to protect your site from wildlife?
I think, well, in our case in the Philippines, the more we plant the natives, the more the wildlife will come. So it's also one of the signs that it is ecologically good. But I'm not sure with some areas with elephants. But what we are trying to promote in rainforestation is also to bring back the native wildlife in the area. So that's why, because we wanted to conserve also those species which are, usually cannot be found somewhere else. It's also one thing that we wanted to bring back their home, especially for the native birds or native mammals, like I forgot the name, but we wanted them to bring back their home. So for if we wanted to do rainforestation in areas with elephants, the thing there is, since elephant is originally there in the area, they will also I think adopt with the trees or species that grows well in that area. So I'm not sure how to do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're lucky in the Philippines you don't have elephants, so that kind of makes it easier. You do have pigs. Are pigs a big problem?
I think in our experiences for rainforestation, I think if there are some sightings of pig, it's not that really negative for us, because pigs usually living in those area which is already forested or not disturbed, unlike for some farms that we are still growing.
And are probably heavily hunted as well. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Another question is, now that we're talking species, trees, animals, etc., it says, what are the strategies in place to avoid the alien or invasive species in the areas that you're working? How do you deal with the alien or invasive species? Is that an issue at all?
At first, it's an issue. There are two things that commonly happens if there are invasive species in the area. One is that they will dominate the area, or if there are some sites where the invasive are there, they are really destroying the whole ecosystem, because that's why we call them invasive. But if you have these exotic species, two things: they will not grow because they are not really common or familiar in the area, or they will become invasive, so they will dominate the area. So the best thing here is to stop spreading the seeds of that. But since they are invasive, it's very difficult to stop it. Like mahogany, it has a faster way of seed dispersal compared to our natives, like the dipterocarps. Dipterocarps will have their seeds at around 5 to 8 years sometimes, because they have that interval. So very difficult. But why we promote rainforestation is that to stop the spread of or the planting of exotic species. So yeah, that's it. We also saw some area in Palawan. They are burning the exotics, and then we recommend to just plant native after what they did. They call it slash and burn agriculture, but to make it sustainable, we wanted them to also propagate native trees in the area.
I think we probably have time for about 2 more questions. So there's a question about how many different native tree species are normally found in on a rainforestation farm. Broad estimate.
How many native species? It depends. But usually if there are some adopters they are not really interested in the economical side. They are really interested in restoration. So they are really collecting the different native trees in their area to put in their own forests. So for example, in our island here in Leyte, we have 20 to 30 species of dipterocarps in this island alone. So some will really collect all of those species and plant it in their farm, something like that, as collection and also for restoration purposes. And there are really lots of native trees. It is very ironic because some people really don't know the natives. They commonly know the exotics because that's what our government previously is promoting. But really, there are a lot of natives that is also good for timber production, and yeah, beneficial, especially for ecological side.
Yeah, I mean, on that point, I was just reading that mahogany is a big problem because people assume mahogany is a Philippine native, whereas actually it's from Bolivia, and a lot of people are planting mahogany with the mistaken idea that it's native.
Yeah, actually, the dipterocarps, which is the native trees in the Philippines, we call it as Philippine mahogany to export it in the timber market internationally before in the early 1900s. So that's why we call it Philippine mahogany, but actually it's not mahogany at all.
Yeah. Saskia, would you like to ask the last question?
Yes, let's do this one for the last question. One participant asks, do you have a case study or story of how rainforestation has been successfully implemented along the buffer zones in protected areas as a good strategy of connecting forest gaps or reforesting biodiversity corridors?
I haven't read publication about that, but it's a good and interesting way to do that. Usually, the publications that I've read about rainforestation is all about the impact in the ecological, economical, and social side. But doing that, I haven't heard yet.
Like not specifically for as a buffer zone for protected areas, but I guess that as more people and more farms join these practices, you unknowingly or with not on purpose, but you're helping to create these areas of connection.
Yeah, but
people get involved.
So also in the case of in the Shenda San Vicente Farmers Association, the whole 2,236 hectares that they are managing under the CBFM agreement, they actually divided it into 3 groups, and then one of that is the buffer zone. So we also saw usually our students in the university, we are giving them some ideas on observe that. So we really saw impacts on the less intervention within the protected area, and then and next to that is the buffer zone, and then next is the multiple use zone. So that's the area where they are commonly doing the intervention like farming.
Nice to have those experiences.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. Thank you, Joy, so much. You know, we need to wrap things up just given that it's approaching 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. But we'd like to thank you for your wonderful presentation and your willingness to do this at what almost midnight in the Philippines. You know, and I realize this has almost been like a, you know, a PhD defense with you there, a committee of 3 questioners just throwing questions at you, you know, one after the other with you barely having time to breathe. So thank you very much for being a great sport and your willingness to continue with this webinar, even though our other speaker had to drop out at the last moment. So thank you once again. We really appreciate it. So as we wrap up, I'd like to share some of the upcoming learning opportunities. So let me share my screen. Okay, so first of all, if you would like to learn more about ELTI's work, we would encourage you to visit our website. And if you go to the events page, you'll see that we have some upcoming events. So these include, all right, a 5-week online training on tropical forest restoration and agroforestry in English. Registration deadline is October 1st, though it is first come, first serve. And please feel free to contact Jillian if you have any questions about that particular event. For those of you who are Spanish speakers, we also have a 5-week course on agroecological and agroforestry systems that will be in Spanish. And the deadline for that is October 15th. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to contact Saskia or look for more information on our website. And in the coming months, we'll be announcing a call for applicants for ELTI's 1-year certificate program, Tropical Forest Landscapes, Conservation, Restoration, and Sustainable Use. And if you're interested in learning more about that program, please explore our website or feel free to contact us directly with any questions. Finally, we'd encourage you, if you're not already, to sign up for ELTI's mailing list, which will give you information about upcoming events, as well as to check out ELTI's YouTube channel. So without any further kind of issues, we'd like to thank you once again for everyone for joining us. I think it's been a really valuable session. Thank you once again to Joy, and thanks to all of you. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. So take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Joy.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye. Take care, everyone.